Hey everybody! So even though the outdoor growing season's come to an end, I can still have loads of fun growing indoors. One of the things I'm very excited to have received recently is this Vermihut worm composting bin. Now I had never done anything like this before. I was a little hesitant to jump into it because when you look at it, it looks messy, it looks smelly, it looks scary, all those worms. But actually, it really isn't. So I recently purchased this for $65 online, and I needed something that was going to have a small footprint. I own my own home, but it is not large. And so here I am actually in my office where I keep this, because here in the high desert, outside temperatures fluctuate so much, even during the summer. I mean, mid-July, between mid and late July, we had one evening that was 34 degrees. Okay, so if I was to do something like this outdoors, there would be a lot more involved. It'd be difficult. I may only be able to do it for a month, a few months out of the year. Here indoors, totally controlled environment in here already. It doesn't smell, which is great if you do it right. So if you are interested in starting your own worm bin, stay tuned, because a couple weeks ago when I received this, I filmed how I set it up. I did a lot of research. This also came with a manual. I took things from the manual. I've been using it for about 2 weeks now, and I've already collected about 8 ounces of worm tea. So this unit is great. I mean, pretty much all the units out there that you buy are going to be pretty similar to this one. This has a little spout where you can collect the worm tea. It's a 3-tray system. You can actually add more trays and go vertical with it if you wanted to. I've already collected about a pound of worm castings that collected in this little separator, this felt separator to separate the worm bins from the worm tea collection tray. Some worm castings that accumulated in there. Tray 1 and tray 2 here at the bottom are almost completely done. Almost 100% worm castings. I actually just started using the 3rd tray at the top just a couple of days ago. So my worms have moved up. Most of them are in the top tray now, and I will be harvesting several pounds of worm castings soon. So if you want to learn how to do this, do it effectively, make your worms happy, and do it without having any sort of a smell or mass exodus of 1,000 worms all over your floor, because they will exit the bin if this is not done properly. Stay tuned. I'm going to show you how. You have your liquid tray. It's probably not the real technical term for it, but all your worm tea drips down into here. So there's that. And this is like the pedestal or stand. It's actually supposed to go this way, and then it bolts onto here. I found that it fits real nice this way, and it's not going to affect the functionality of it at all. So I'm just going to leave it like that. Anyways, what I want to do just real quick is show you guys my plan. Now, tray number 1, of course, would be the tray you start in. That goes down furthest to the bottom. So let's say I was going to get my tray 1 ready here. For now, I'll just get it ready right here on top, and then once I got it all ready, I'll move that tray to the bottom. The first thing you're going to want to put in the bottom of your first bin is paper. Most people will use something like newspaper. I don't read the newspaper, I read the internet, but I do have some nice blank printer paper. I no longer have a printer, but I have a surplus of paper. Here, I got all my paper in there. See there? Next, we're going to add our compost. I don't know if I'm going to add all of this or not, because I need to mix some of this cocoa coir in there. Now, it's essential to have something like cocoa coir or peat moss mixed in with your compost, because that is what's going to help keep it light and fluffy, and that keeps the air in there. Without that air, you're going to get anaerobic activity that then's eventually going to stink. Some people do use shredded newspaper, that sort of thing. I highly recommend cocoa coir or peat moss. Now, keep in mind, if you do use peat moss has a pH of about 4.2. So you're definitely going to want to make sure you add plenty of powdered eggshells that you put through your coffee grinder in order to balance out that pH, because eggshells have a lot of calcium. Eggshells are very basic. You add that to the peat moss and you should come out with a good pH level that the worms are going to be okay with. Obviously cocoa coir is better, however it's very expensive. I did recently purchase 3 cubic feet of peat moss and we'll be using that in the future in combination with some eggshells. Alright. Now this has been pre-moistened. It's not to the moisture level that I want yet, so I will water this down. The consistency that you want is when you hold this in your hand, which I'm not going to do yet because I need to mix it. When you hold this in your hand, if water runs off of it without you squeezing, just holding it in your hand like so, if water runs off of it, it's too moist. If when you squeeze it, if you don't get any water coming out of it, if you don't get some drops of water, then it's not moist enough. Alright? So I've ordered a pound of red wigglers that haven't come yet, and that's fine because they say you want to let this sit for have the rock dust. You want to let this sit for a couple of weeks typically before you throw your worms in here, and that's just so that it has some time to all kind of blend together and start to break down, and for the microbes and the bacteria to really get going in here. I just added ground eggshells to the bin. This is because worms have a gizzard and they need something granular to help them digest their food. This is also why I added the rock dust and part of the reason why I added the coffee ground. I've got my rock dust, my eggshells. Now, what I need to get in here is some coffee. I hear that worms love coffee. I'm going to add, oh, that's good. Good coffee. Well, I guess I added quite a bit there. Probably added about a cup and a half. But hey, this is about having fun. Continue to feed these worms throughout the winter. So my hope is by spring that I will have several pounds of worm casting. I'm hoping I can really get like 30 to 50 pounds. So I'm going to start out this first tray, and then once I get my worm skin and put in there, I'll probably fill up these other 2 trays, set them on top. Because what happens is as they eat that number 1 tray down at the bottom, they'll move up to the top tray, and then by the time they've moved up, you can take your first tray and you've got all those worm castings. So not only will we have good worm castings, but I've got all good stuff in here that I normally would put in my garden soil anyway. The rock dust, eggshells, coffee grounds, compost. I mean, I could plant some seedlings in here right now and start growing stuff. But this is for the worms, so let me just go ahead and show you guys. So here it is, tray number 1. You see, it's nice and light and fluffy. We're gonna, like I said, add more water to this because it needs to be not that dry. It needs quite a bit more moisture in here, and we're definitely gonna do that before putting the worms in. So it smells real good, especially with that coffee in there. Alright, I almost forgot one of the most important things, and that is adding additional foods such as kitchen scraps. You definitely want to be careful initially when you set your bin up. Give it a couple days, especially if you use good compost and coffee grounds, because that in itself provides a food source that will last them, several days, maybe even weeks. But you can, after 2 or 3 days, begin to add a little bit of kitchen scraps in here. Not too much, be careful. Initially if you want to throw a couple pieces of lettuce in there, some shredded lettuce, whatever you may have. Whatever you do, make sure that you chop it up, or, make sure you're not just throwing like an entire apple core in here or something. You definitely want to be careful as far as how much food you put in there at one time as well. Because remember, you've got to watch your moisture levels and your pH. If you add a bunch of food in here that has a lot of moisture, a lot of water, you can get some anaerobic activity. It can be too wet in there for the worms. The worms need to be able to breathe through their skin. So you don't want to get it too wet, otherwise you can have loads of worms trying to exit your bin. Anyways, I'll have an upcoming episode on how I feed the worms at another point in time. Here's a quick look at what the worm bin looked like about a week and a half after starting it. I did put some pulp from my juicer down here. That's the food that you see right there. Most of it's been eaten already. This is a very small portion that's left over. I did add some leaves because I wanted to make it kind of like a natural environment for these worms. You could potentially add more leaves than I did, but you can see the worms are loving it. They're very healthy. You can see the soil is still very light and fluffy and aerated. Now I'm also going to show you the collection tray, the worm tea collection tray. This is what it looked like a week and a half in. I hope you guys have enjoyed this episode on how to set up your worm bin. Some of you may be wondering, well, why didn't you make your own worm bin? All you have to do is get yourself one of those Rubbermaid containers or whatever. I am a do-it-yourselfer, and I do like to do things myself. I am, however, a perfectionist, and I calculated the costs and the materials and the time. Time is really the big thing. Most people don't realize how much of your time is taken up just with everyday life and all the other wonderful things in preparation and other things that I've got growing on. And I just had to calculate it out. Something that was going to look nice, have a small footprint, for $65, I just couldn't beat this. Because by the time I added up the materials, like I said, and the time, it came out to more, actually. And this unit actually came with a nice sizable brick of coco coir. And if you've priced coco coir, you know it's not cheap. That one brick here in my local area, and probably even online, is $10 just for that brick of coco coir. So it really, this was the best way to go. And to have something that's molded to fit right, work right, look nice, have a nice spout, I just couldn't beat it. So I hope you guys, I hope this has helped, hope it's inspired you to start worm composting, because you really can't add anything better to your garden soil the microbes and the life that is in these castings is just wonderful for your garden. In fact, in doing my research on YouTube, I've come across quite a few people who set their worm castings out in the sun and dry them out. And I watched in horror as people did this. You are killing the life in your worm castings. All those microorganisms, all those beneficials, you are killing them when you dry your worm castings. So if you do this, keep that in mind. Hope this has helped you to start worm composting at home.